A wealthy driver walks into Judge Caprio's courtroom convinced rules don't apply to him. The man is Earl Donovan, a 78-year-old war veteran. He carries himself with pride. Shoulders back, medals on his lapel, and a hint of entitlement that makes the room shift. His charge? Speeding through a school zone at nearly twice the limit. But what truly raised eyebrows wasn't the ticket. It was his attitude. Earl had been cited before, and each time he treated the summons like an inconvenience meant for ordinary people. Today he arrived late, phone in hand, muttering about how kids shouldn't even be near the road that early. When Judge Caprio looked up, the courtroom quieted. Earl didn't rise when addressed, didn't apologize, didn't even look up from his screen, and yet by the time the gavel fell, something in that courtroom would change. What began as arrogance would end in a lesson money, medals, or pride couldn't buy. This story isn't about punishment. It's about principle. Because law doesn't bend for legacy. And respect isn't owed. It's earned. Tell us where you're watching from, because entitlement looks the same everywhere. It's a chilly Tuesday morning in Providence, Rhode Island. The kind of gray sky that makes the courthouse steps glisten after an early drizzle. Inside Courtroom 7, the air hums with quiet anticipation, the kind that comes just before Judge Caprio takes the bench. Next case, Earl Donovan, the bailiff calls. Voice steady, practiced, Earl moves toward the podium with a measured gait, leaning on a polished wooden cane. His blazer carries the faint shimmer of old military ribbons. To anyone else it might signal respect. But to the bailiff who's seen Earl before, it signals trouble. The bailiff leans toward the clerk, whispering just loud enough for a few in the front row to hear. Same guy. Same attitude. Last time he walked out before the hearing ended. The clerk nods, eyes flicking toward the judge's empty seat. They know today could go either way. Earl exhales loudly as he stands, pulling out his phone, scrolling. He doesn't look up when the bailiff reminds him to remove his hat. Doesn't flinch when a child in the gallery turns to stare. The room feels it, the small chill of arrogance. On the docket, speeding 38 in a 20-maf school zone. A crossing guard's report noted he didn't slow down, didn't look around. When cited, Earl reportedly said, "I've been driving longer than you've been alive, son, now." As the courtroom door opens and Judge Frank Caprio enters, the energy shifts. People straighten their backs. The chatter dies. The bailiff announces, "All rise." Everyone stands, except Earl, who lingers a moment too long before reluctantly pushing himself upright with his cane. The hesitation doesn't go unnoticed. Judge Caprio sits, calm and composed, scanning the room over his glasses. His tone is warm, respectful, but his eyes miss nothing. "Good morning, Mr. Donovan," he says gently. "Let's talk about this school zone ticket." Earl doesn't meet his gaze. He mutters, "Let's make it quick, Judge. I've got somewhere to be." A few people exchange looks. The tension is almost tangible now, the air thick with that uneasy mix of pride and patience about to be tested. The case begins. Judge Caprio leans forward, hands folded. His tone is measured, the calm before the inevitable storm. "Mr. Donovan," he begins, "you're charged with speeding in a school zone. The report says you were going 38 in a 20. Children were present. How do you plead?" Earl doesn't look up. "I plead. Bored," he mutters, still scrolling through his phone. "Can we make this quick, Judge? I've been through worse than a parking ticket." The courtroom stiffens. Someone coughs softly, the sound slicing through the quiet. Judge Caprio's eyes narrow slightly, not with anger but with curiosity. "Sir," the judge says, calm as still water, "this isn't a parking ticket. This is a school zone violation." Earl sighs. Yeah. I saw the kids. They were fine. I've been driving since before that officer was even born. I wasn't a danger to anyone." In the second row, a mother folds her arms tightly. A teacher from the local elementary school shakes her head. The gallery isn't used to this kind of arrogance. Not in this room. Judge Caprio adjusts his glasses, voice steady. "Mr. Donovan, do you understand why there's a speed limit in a school zone?" "Because people can't drive properly," Earl replies, half smiling. "I can. The silence that follows is heavy. No one speaks. Even the bailiff takes a small step closer, sensing tension. Judge Caprio lets the words hang in the air before replying. "You fought for this country, didn't you, Mr. Donovan?" Earl looks up for the first time. "Damn right I did. And for that we're grateful," the judge continues. But the uniform, the medals, they don't exempt you from the law. The rules you defended still apply to you. The line lands with quiet force. Earl shifts, uncomfortable but defiant. So what? You're gonna make an example out of me? Judge Caprio smiles faintly. No, sir. I'm going to give you a chance to set one. A murmur ripples through the courtroom. Surprise, respect, a kind of emotional recalibration. This is the tone only Judge Caprio can command. Firm, fair and human. Earl scoffs. Whatever you say. Judge, just give me the fine so I can go. Judge Caprio exhales softly, his patience deep but not endless. We'll get there, Mr. Donovan. But first we'll get to the truth. And with that the first clash ends, not in shouting, but in a quiet, controlled shift of moral ground. The audience senses it. The storm is only beginning. The tension in the courtroom lingers like static in the air. Every word, every breath feels deliberate now. Judge Caprio, still patient, looks down at the citation file. It says here, Mr. Donovan, this isn't your first school zone violation. There was another, 3 months ago. Earl waves a dismissive hand. Clerical nonsense. That cop had it out for me. Probably wanted to meet a war hero. The bailiff shifts uncomfortably. Someone in the back lets out a low whistle, the kind people make when they can't believe what they just heard. Judge Caprio keeps his tone level. Mr. Donovan, are you suggesting the officer fabricated the report? I'm saying people love to exaggerate when they see a nice car. Earl smirks. You drive a 1965 Mustang convertible, and suddenly everyone thinks you're reckless. He leans on the podium, smirking at the spectators, basking in his own bravado. Caprio doesn't react. I see, he says slowly. So your car caused the violation, not your choices. Earl chuckles. Something like that, yeah. You've probably never driven something with that kind of power, Judge. That one crosses a line. A few gasps ripple through the benches, not because it was vulgar, but because it was disrespectful. Judge Caprio's voice tightens just slightly. Mr. Donovan, I've spent my career respecting every person who enters this courtroom, regardless of what they drive. But Earl isn't done. Oh, come on. Half these people in here probably can't afford a bicycle. What do they know about control? A young mother in the audience glares at him. A teacher whispers, "Unbelievable." Even the stenographer stops typing for a moment, eyebrows raised. Judge Caprio takes off his glasses and folds them deliberately. A subtle shift that everyone recognizes. Though it's the sound of patience reaching its edge. Mr. Donovan, he says, the people in this courtroom represent the city you fought to protect. You don't speak at them. You speak to them. With respect. Earl straightens up, his pride bristling. Respect? I've earned more of that than anyone in this room. You should be thanking me, not lecturing me. Caprio lets the silence stretch. He doesn't rush to respond. The pause becomes heavier than any shout could be. Then, in that steady, unwavering tone, he says, "Gratitude and immunity are not the same thing." Mr. Donovan! The words cut through the room like glass, but Earl, trapped in his pride, presses on. Maybe if the city spent less time ticketing veterans and more time fixing potholes, you wouldn't need these little shows of justice. A few gasps break the silence. Security near the door takes a small instinctive step forward, not threatening but ready. Judge Caprio doesn't flinch. Are you calling this a show? Earl shrugs. If the shoe fits. And that's it. The final twist of arrogance before the inevitable turn. Caprio leans forward slightly, his voice low but firm. This is not a show, Mr. Donovan. This is justice being served with dignity, something I hope you still understand. The room is dead quiet. You can hear the hum of the ceiling lights, the faint shuffle of someone crossing their legs. The moment feels suspended. Earl crosses his arms. Fine. Do what you have to do, Judge. I've seen worse. The judge nods slowly, gaze unwavering. Then you're about to see accountability. And with that, the balance begins to shift, from arrogance to reckoning. The courtroom knows something powerful is about to happen. The courtroom sits in that fragile quiet, the kind that comes right before truth reclaims the floor. Judge Caprio turns a page in the file, his movement unhurried, deliberate. Mr. Donovan, he says softly, when an officer approached you that morning, you reportedly refused to provide your license until backup arrived. Is that correct? Earl shrugs. I told him I wasn't giving my papers to a kid with a badge until someone in charge showed up. That's not a crime. The words hang heavy in the air. The gallery shifts, a quiet mix of disbelief and discomfort. Caprio nods slowly. And when the supervising officer did arrive? Earl chuckles under his breath. Told him the same thing. I don't answer to rookies. The judge sets his pen down. For the first time today, he looks not just at Earl, but through him. Mr. Donovan, I need you to understand something very clearly. His voice drops a register, steady and calm, but the warmth is gone. In this courtroom, you answer to the law. Not to youth, not to rank, to the law. Earl straightens, his pride flaring one last time. Maybe you've forgotten what men like me did so you could sit there. The entire room goes still. No one breathes. Caprio's face doesn't move. No, sir, he says quietly. I remember every day. My father was a veteran too. But he taught me that the uniform doesn't make you untouchable. It makes you accountable. Earl opens his mouth and then stops. The words, the authority, the calm conviction, they land like a mirror, shattering his own reflection. Caprio leans slightly forward, tone final. This ends now, Mr. Donovan. You will not interrupt again. You will not speak over this court. And you will not disrespect those who serve the law you once fought to defend. The bailiff steps half a pace forward, not as a threat, but as quiet reinforcement. The sound of his shoes against the floor echoes through the chamber, a punctuation mark on the shift of power. Earl looks around. The crowd isn't smirking now. They're watching him with something between pity and respect. For the first time, he seems to feel it, the weight of his own behavior. He lowers his eyes. Understood, Your Honor, he mutters, and just like that, the storm breaks. Respect reclaims the room. Order, once tested, is restored. The tension has cooled into quiet understanding, but justice still waits to be spoken aloud. Judge Caprio folds his hands, deliberate and calm. Mr. Donovan, he begins, I've reviewed the officer's report, your driving record, and your conduct here today. Earl looks down at his shoes, cane resting against the podium. The defiance that filled the room earlier now hangs on him like a weight. The judge continues, tone steady, but not unkind. You were cited for traveling 38 miles per hour in a 20-mile-per-hour school zone. That's nearly double the limit. The fine for that offense is $250. He pauses. However, I'm also taking into account your prior citation and your conduct this morning. Earl shifts, guilt flickering across his face. Judge, Caprio raises a gentle hand. I'm not finished. The room holds still. I'm adding a $100 penalty for contemptuous behavior toward the officer and for your conduct here in court. That brings your total to $350. Earl nods slightly, but the judge's next words strike deeper. Understand, Mr. Donovan, this is not about the money. It never is. You can afford this fine, I'm sure. But accountability cannot be paid off. It must be understood. Caprio's voice softens, the firmness giving way to moral clarity. You earned this country's respect decades ago, sir. But respect is a living thing. It must be renewed, every day in how we treat others. A quiet wave of emotion moves through the courtroom. The spectators, once bristling at Earl's arrogance, now listen in reflective silence. The judge turns a page and signs the judgment. You will pay the fine within 30 days. No license suspension this time. But if there's another violation, especially in a school zone, that will change. He looks up again. Do you understand why this is necessary? Earl hesitates. Because I broke the law. Caprio nods. And, Earl swallows, because I disrespected the people enforcing it. Caprio leans back, satisfied. Good, that's a start. He taps his pen once softly. This courtroom doesn't exist to humiliate anyone. It exists to remind us all that fairness isn't a weakness and it's a duty. Then, almost kindly, you may sit for a moment. Mr. Donovan, I'd like to say something to you before we close. Earl lowers himself slowly, humbled, eyes fixed on the desk. The gavel rests quietly beside the judge's hand, not raised, not needed. Justice today has already spoken. The courtroom feels different now, some quieter, almost reverent. The sharpness that once filled the air has been replaced by something gentler, reflection. Judge Caprio sets his papers aside. Mr. Donovan, he says, voice low but kind, you've served your country. That deserves our gratitude. But when you stood here today, I saw a man who's forgotten how much that service meant. Earl's head stays down. His hands grip the cane tightly, knuckles pale. The judge continues, "You once defended laws that protected children, the same children who walk to that school every morning. Those same laws protect them now, and they protect you too." The words hit their mark. Earl exhales slowly, eyes glistening. For the first time, his tone softens. "You're right, Judge," he murmurs. "I was out of line. Guess I thought. After everything I've done, I'd earned a little leniency." Caprio nods gently. "Leniency comes after humility, not before it." A quiet chuckle escapes Earl, half laugh, half sigh. "I sound like my old commanding officer." Caprio smiles faintly. "I'll take that as a compliment." The gallery watches in silence. No one moves. Even the bailiff, arms crossed near the door, seems to ease his stance. Earl's voice trembles slightly. "I shouldn't have spoken that way to the officer. Or to you. I thought I'd earned respect. But I see now you have to keep earning it." Caprio nods once, not a grand gesture, just enough. "That acknowledgement means more than any fine you'll pay." Earl wipes his eyes quickly, pretending it's nothing. "Guess I needed a reminder." Caprio replies softly, "We all do from time to time." A ripple of quiet understanding passes through the room, the kind that reminds everyone why people come to this courtroom, not just for justice but for humanity. Caprio leans back slightly. "Apology accepted, Mr. Donovan." Earl nods, voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you, Your Honor." And in that moment, no sound, no gavel, no applause, just stillness. The kind of stillness that feels like peace returning. Judge Caprio takes a long breath, his gaze sweeping across the courtroom, from the defendant to the gallery, then to the quiet space that always seems to hold more than walls should. "When I look at you, Mr. Donovan," he begins, "I don't see a bad man. I see a man who once carried honor like a banner, but sometimes honor can turn into pride if we stop holding ourselves accountable." He lets the words breathe. The room listens. In this courtroom, character counts more than currency. The law doesn't care about what's in your wallet or on your chest. It cares about what's in your heart. Because that's where respect begins. He leans slightly forward, his voice now the warm blend of mentor and father. "You see, your medals tell us who you were. Your behavior tells us who you are. And your choices tell us who you're still becoming." Earl nods faintly, his eyes lowered but attentive. Caprio continues, "Your success doesn't buy you a discount on decency. Respect is free and required. Every person who walks through these doors stands on equal ground. Whether they're a teacher, a taxi driver, or a veteran, the law holds them all the same." He glances briefly toward the audience, then back to Earl. "You didn't just break a speed limit today. You broke the trust that comes with service. But by apologizing, by accepting this lesson, you've begun to rebuild it." The judge's voice softens like the last note of a hymn. "We can't change what brought us here, but we can decide what we take with us when we leave." A pause. Then, with the clarity that defines his courtroom, "Justice without compassion is cruelty. Compassion without accountability is chaos. Somewhere between those two is fairness, and that's where we choose to stand." He gives one small nod, signaling both the end of his speech and the restoration of order. The courtroom feels lighter now, not triumphant, but at peace. As the cameras pan across the quiet courtroom, you can almost feel what everyone in that room felt. A mixture of humility, gratitude, and relief. Moments like this remind you that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about perspective. One man walked in believing he was above the rules. He walked out reminded that the very rules he ignored are what make a civilized world possible. Maybe you've seen it too. Someone who lets pride speak louder than reason. Maybe you've been that person once. It doesn't take a uniform or a title to lose sight of respect. It only takes forgetting that others matter as much as we do. Have you ever seen power make someone forget respect? Would you have handled it differently if you were in Judge Caprio's seat, or Earl Donovan's? Share your thoughts below, because in conversations like this, we learn more about who we are, and who we still hope to be. Earl Donovan learned that in Judge Caprio's courtroom, respect is earned, it's not bought. He came in carrying pride and left carrying perspective. A fine can close a case, but humility can reopen a heart. That's what this courtroom stands for. Not punishment for its own sake, but the restoration of dignity through fairness. If you believe in justice delivered with compassion, If you believe mercy and accountability can coexist, then you belong here with us. Subscribe for more true courtroom stories where the law meets humanity, where every case reminds us that behind every ticket, there's a lesson about who we choose to be. Because in Judge Caprio's court, justice doesn't shout. It speaks calmly, firmly, and with heart.